There's like a 30-second delay. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Shrotataraj Vishnumatas Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Shrotataraj Vishnumatas Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shiva Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Shri Brihat Mardanga Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Entire God Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste
Namaste Narasimhaya. Hiranya Kashipur Vakshaha Shilatam Kanakari Ito Nisingha Parato Nisingho Jato Jato Jamitato Nisingha Bahir Visingho Hridaye Visingho Nrisinghavadi Sharanam Prapadye Nrisinghavadi Sharanam Prapadye Kamala Kore Naka Adbhuta Srinam Valita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringa Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Sarakara Pramana Sing Bhagavad Gita.
Hare Krishna. Great to see everyone. Welcome back. Some of you never left, but welcome back in the general sense that today is our first day of reopening the temple. We have done different festivals and such like that. We're officially opening the Sunday feast for the foreseeable future, hopefully for with no stoppage ever again. But today is the day we're inaugurating the opening of the Sunday feast. So we are encouraged as you come out. We expect as the night goes on, more people will come. That's typically what happens. But also as the weeks go on, people will become a little bit more comfortable and such to coming to the temple. But we're very happy you've come tonight. Today is Ekadasi. I want to quickly mention. So on Ekadasi, the deities, they have special outfits for Ekadasi. How many people knew that? A couple. What colors are used specifically during the Ekadasi outfits? Pink? That's what I say. It's for pink. Another color? Yes, because they're wearing beautiful pink. This is a new upper outfit. I think it was also on Radhastami, this outfit. Very beautiful. The garlands you can see match very nicely. They're very colorful, very fitting of the season. There's another color they use. Look pretty, you know? The color of your Ekadasi colors.
With red and silver or pink or silver.
Red and silver and pink and silver. So just something to know. It's good to kind of know. You come different times. Notice in the Ekadasi it'll be pink and silver, red and silver. So tonight we're going to have our Bhagavad Gita lecture series. It will be given by His Grace Acharya Prabhu. Acharya Prabhu, he is a disciple of His Holiness Satsvarup Maharaj. Joined in the 80s, early 80s. Served in many capacities. Given his wife Sudevya lived here in the Philadelphia area for about six years, 7 years. Before that, they were in the Gitanagari Dham for a long period of time. Acharya Prabhu, he's part of our Srimad Bhagavatam classes in the morning. It's really wonderful, insightful classes. We always look forward to hearing them. Tonight, as we're going through the third chapter, the topic tonight is that there's so many leaders in the world. Which ones should we follow? So that's something very, very relevant and should be. This time, I invite Acharya Prabhu forward. Yeah.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giri Varadhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Nandana Braja Jana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giri Varadhari Vallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giri Varadhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Purvajakracharya Astotra Satyashishi Mad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Purvajakracharya Astotra Satyashishi Mad His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudhi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Thank you.
Is it possible to switch that?
Sure.
I just realized that it's too long.
Okay. Yep, that's great. Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogda Gopalanandana Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahat. This Bhagavad Gita, Gita Upanishad, is the essence of all the Upanishads. And this Gita Upanishad is just like a cow. Lord Krishna, who is famous as a cowherd boy, is milking this cow. Arjuna is just like a calf, and learned scholars and pure devotees are meant to drink the nectarian milk of Bhagavad Gita as it is. Today we'll be reading chapter 3, text 21. Yad yad acharati shreshtas. Do we do it the old way or the Zoom way? Okay, I'll just read it. Yad yad acharati shreshtas tatare vatarojana sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadanuvartate. Word for word translation. Yat, whatever. Yat, and whichever. Acharati, does he act? Shreshta, respectable leader. Tat, that. Tat, and that alone. Eva, certainly. Itara, common. Jana, person. Sa, he. Yat, whichever. Pramanam, evidence. Kurute, does perform. Loka, all the world. Tat, that. Anuvartate, follow in the footsteps. Translation. Whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow in his footsteps. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. People in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly even before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called Acharya, or the ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra, scripture, to reach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures. The revealed scriptures, like Manu Samhita and similar others, are considered the standard books to be followed by human society. Thus, the leader's teaching should be based on the principles of the standard rules as they are practiced by the great teachers. The Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow in the footsteps of great devotees, and that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king or the executive head of a state, the father, and the school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have a great responsibility to their dependents. Therefore, they must be conversant with standard books of moral and spiritual codes. Yad yad acharati shreshtas tattare vataro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanuvartate. Whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow in his footsteps. and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Nam Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishnu Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanivadi Pasjada Deshatarine. Hare Krishna. What's that? Closer? Okay. Thanks everyone for coming. It's a big crowd, relatively speaking, big crowd. Nice to see everyone. So many leaders, which one to follow? I could just say, oh, just follow Srila Prabhupada and walk away, and that would be correct, but we'll examine it in some depth, in some little more depth here. Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about the natural leaders of society, the heads of state, the teachers, what was the other one? Heads of state, teachers, and the parents, the father and mother, natural leaders. So these are the natural leaders of society, aside from Krishna consciousness. And what did he, let's briefly mention the unnatural leaders. This is leadership by force, the cruel dictator, the bully, the leading by military might, free of any morality, free of any goodness. But the natural leaders, the heads of state, the teachers, the parents, natural leaders means they're the ones who have dependents, and they're supposed to be guiding, protecting, and educating those dependents. Which means that they're serving those dependents. They're doing it for the benefit of those under it. The king has the praja, the people, the citizens under him, and he has to see to the well-being of all the members of the society, all the citizens. Of course, Prabhupada very often used to say that nowadays the heads of state, they see to the benefit of the human members of society, but praja means those who are born in that state. That also includes the animals. So see to the humans, but slaughter the animals. So this is an imbalance, but anyway, for what it's worth, that's what the head of state is supposed to do. Guide and protect and educate and see to the well-being and the elevation of those under him. And the parents are supposed to see to the well-being and the education of their children, bring them up right, train them in morality and religious principles, how to be good people, effective and constructive members contributing to society. This is the duty of the parents. And the teacher is supposed to educate the student, all for the benefit of those under the leader, the so-called leader. And that's why when there's a head of state who's a criminal or a rascal or awful in some way, it's so offensive to people. Or when there's a parent who's not protecting their child, or cases of child abuse, it's so offensive to any ordinary, what to speak of a sensitive person, to any ordinary person, or a teacher that abuses their position or doesn't educate the children. It's so offensive to any thinking, feeling person, because we recognize these are the natural leaders and they have a natural responsibility to those under them. And when they perform that duty properly, those under these natural leaders have an obligation. The leaders are actually serving those under them, but those under the protection and under the care and education of the leaders also have an obligation to reciprocate. In the kingdom, in the just kingdom at least, the citizens have a duty to pay taxes and contribute to the society. The student has to respect the teacher, at least bring them an apple in the morning to show them respect, something like that. And the children are supposed to respect and obey their parents. And in a sane society, when the parents get old, the children take care of their elderly parents. So this is the obligation. There's all these types of leaders are contributing to society, and society has an obligation back to them. And so many leaders are there. Devarshi Bhutapta Nrinam Pitrinam. The Devatas are supplying the air we breathe, and the sun and the sky, and the wind, and the air, and the food, and the moon, and the water, and the weather, and all of these things are being contributed by the Devatas. And in return, a sane person has a responsibility to pay back those Devatas, those demigods, through the process of sacrifice, through the process of yajna. Devarshi, Deva Rishi, the Rishis are teaching us Vedic knowledge. And the way we pay back the Rishis is to study the Vedas very deeply and obey the Vedic injunctions and study the Vedic knowledge. Devarshi Bhuta, Bhuta means all the living entities in general. All of them are contributing to our well-being and to our society. So we offer acts of charity and we contribute to society in various ways to help everyone, to help all the living beings in our world, in our society. Apta, we have our friends, and we make friendship with them, and we have all the different kinds of loving exchanges that we have with friends to pay them back. If we have a friend and we just take from them and never receive back, that's not a very good standard of friendship. Devarshi Bhutapta Nrinam Pitrinam, and Pitrinam, the forefathers. That means the parents and all the forefathers that came before. The parents and the forefathers, how do we pay them back? We pay them back, generally speaking, at least in Vedic culture, by getting married and having children and ensuring that the practice of offering pinda to the forefathers is going on so that all the forefathers can attain an auspicious position after life. So these natural leaders, it's incumbent upon us to pay them back for what they're contributing to society and to our own well-being. But this is a very difficult process, a time-consuming process, and difficult, if not impossible, to do perfectly. The example of that is there in the Srimad Bhagavatam of Maharaj Nriga. He was a great king and very expert first-class king. But just by a little mistake in offering respect to the Brahmanas, who are also natural leaders of society, he made a little mistake in serving those Brahmanas. And he tried his best to rectify it, but ultimately he was punished for his failure. So there's so many millions of Devatas, and we have so many teachers and so many forefathers. So fulfilling and gratifying and fulfilling our obligation to all of them is very difficult and ultimately impossible to do perfectly. And even if done perfectly, this is all still within the realm of the material world. And as devotees, we're interested in a little bit more beyond that. So what do we do with these obligations? So all of these leaders, natural leaders, Devarshi Bhutapta Nrinam Pitrinam, the verse goes on, Nakinkaro Nayam Rinim Charajan, that actually you don't have to become a servant or a debtor or obligated to all of these leaders. If, this is Devarshi Bhutapta Nrinam Pitrinam, I can't remember the rest of the verse. Nakinkaro Narajan. Someone remember the rest of that verse? That Sharanam Sharanyam, I can't remember it now. But it goes on to say that you don't have to maintain your obligation to all of these leaders if you surrender to Krishna, who is Sharanam Sharanyam, who is able to give shelter to everyone. The demigods give a little shelter in the form of the rain and the weather and the elements of material nature. And the parents give some shelter, and the friends and the rishis all give some shelter. But Krishna is the shelter of everyone and everything. And if you surrender to Krishna and take shelter of Krishna, then automatically, Nakinkaro Nayam Rinim Charajan, then automatically you are no longer a debtor to all of these other leaders of society. You've surrendered
Saranam
to
Saranyam Mukunda.
But if you don't do that, if you don't surrender to Krishna, and if you don't satisfy all these obligations then you're an ingrate. Actually, Bhagavad Gita says you're a thief. Ishtan Bogan Hivo Deva. That the demigods are supplying all the necessities of life. Material nature is giving us everything to live. Dasyanta Yagya Bhavita. And you pay them back by performing sacrifice to the demigods. Tardatan apradaya yo bunte stena eva sa. And if you don't pay them back, then stena eva, then you're just like a thief. Because you're taking from material nature, but you're not paying back. So you're no better than a thief. Or if you don't respect what your parents are giving you, or if you don't respect what the rishis are giving you, you're a thief and you're condemned, and your karmic reaction for that will come. But if you simply surrender to Krishna, then all of that is taken care of. That's why when the Brijavasis refused to, at Krishna's instigation, refused to perform the sacrifice to Indra, that's why Indra was so angry, because that's actually the standard process. If it weren't for the fact that it was Krishna directing them to do so, he would be, at least to some degree, justified in punishing. But because it was Krishna's instruction, he misunderstood. So this is how we deal with these natural leaders. So what about beyond that for devotees? So we've given up these natural leaders. Who are the other leaders of society for devotees that devotees follow? Oh, actually, here it is. I found the verse. Devashi bhutaptrinam pitrinam nakinkaro nayam rini charajan sarvatmana ya sharanam sharanyam gato mugandam parihrityakardam. That if you surrender to Krishna, who is the shelter of everything, then you're freed from all of these obligations. So if we take to bhakti, the process of bhakti, we're freed from these material obligations. But that doesn't mean we're free of this principle of leadership that continues. So for the devotee, who are the leaders? And the leader, like today's verse, yad yad acharati shreshta. The actual word shreshta means the best person. So who's the best person that's actually fit to be the leaders in society? That's the devotee. This is a discussion from the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, starting in chapter 14. It's the story of Vritrasura, who was a big demon, or he appeared as a demon, but he was actually a devotee. And the question is asked by Parikshit Maharaj, how is such he's a demon, but how is he a devotee? A devotee is such a rare thing. So he explains, in this material world, there are as many living entities as atoms. Among these living entities, a very few are human beings, and among them, few are interested in following religious principles. So just in this room, there are more living entities than we could possibly count. In fact, in the tip of my finger, there are more living entities than we could count or conceive of. So in this room, there's, to a couple dozen who are human beings, or however many, I don't know, 1 million or 2, whatever, in Philadelphia, out of the countless other living beings. And out of those millions in Philadelphia, how many are actually interested in religious principles? Very few, very few. So he goes on, O best of the Brahmanas, Shukadev Goswami, out of many persons who follow religious principles, only a few desire liberation from the material world. Among many thousands who desire liberation, one may actually achieve liberation, giving up material attachment to society, friendship, love, country, home, wife, and children. And among many thousands of such liberated persons, one who can understand the true meaning of liberation is very rare. So countless living entities, and out of them a small percentage are human. And out of them a smaller percentage are interested in religious principles. And out of them a tiny percentage are interested in the ultimate religious principles of being freed from material existence. And out of them a tiny percentage are even remotely successful at it. And out of those, even a smaller percentage actually understand the real meaning of liberation. And then he goes on, Muktanam api siddhanam narayana
I know.
Sadurlabha prasantatma koti shwapi mahamune. O great sage, among many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may be a devotee of Lord Narayan or Krishna. Such devotees who are fully peaceful are extremely rare. So how rare to be a devotee, but the devotee is actually Shrestha. He's the best. He's the topmost person. He's the devotee, is the leader of society, he or she. Lord Chaitanya even says, Prabhu kahe yanra mukhe sune ekabar, Krishna nam se puja Shrestha sabakar. Again, this word Shrestha, the best person. He says someone who chants the holy name just one time is the best person in society. So someone comes to the temple and he chants, he sees the deities, he says Hare Krishna, or he comes here and has a little faith in Krishna, Ado Shraddha, just a little bit, and he hears, oh, I'm not this body. Oh, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just that little bit automatically puts him so far ahead of the average person, even the average religious person, puts him so far ahead, so rare. And if that person leaves the temple and he tells someone, oh yeah, I was at the Krishna temple, and they said, oh, you're not your body, you're a spirit, soul, part and parcel of Krishna. That's the highest, that brand new person who the day before didn't know anything, he becomes Shrestha immediately. He's teaching the highest knowledge and giving the highest benefit to society. So the devotee is the natural leader of society, the best person, the natural leader, the actual natural leader on the spiritual platform. And that's bigger than any rich man, bigger than any big CEO or head of state or king or any kind of big person you could think of. Any ordinary, humble little person who knows that little bit, that I'm not this body, I'm spirit to soul, part and parcel of Krishna, and therefore my duty is to serve Krishna. Just that little bit of knowledge makes you the topmost person, the best person. And the contribution of the person spreading that is the greatest contribution to society. Yad yad acharati shreshtas, tatadeva tarojana, sayat pramanam kurute. Pramanam, the evidence of his life that he presents to everyone, is the greatest evidence, the greatest example in society. And he contributes the greatest charity to society by doing that. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says, there has not been, there will not be such benefactors of the highest merit as Mahaprabhu and his devotees have been. The offer of other benefits is only a deception. It is rather a great harm, whereas the benefit done by him and his followers is the truest and greatest eternal benefit. That is not a benefit lasting only for a few days, being only a timely benefit. His lordship or his followers do not delude people by speaking of such benefits as would after a short time produce harm, by which some other party would be harmed, just as the benefit of one country connotes mischief to another. Just like I was a while back, I was reading Bhaktivinoda Thakur's autobiography. And in his early days, before he was a devotee, and he was writing how there was a big Durga festival. And he said, yes, it was a big festival, lots of sacrifice going on, and everyone enjoyed it very much, except for the goats, because the goats were being sacrificed. So this is material benefit, that some are benefited and some are being harmed or committing mischief to them. Just as when I am benefited by driving in a coach, the horses are harmed. Had when I give another an advantage for the time being, I suffer a proportionate disadvantage. They have spoken of such a benefit. They have given such a thing as it is the highest benefit for all times, for all conditions. The benefit is not for a particular country causing mischief to another, but it benefits the whole universe. Mahaprabhu's benefit does not produce any evil. For this, from his grace, no evil arises. And for this again, his is the highest benevolence, and so are his devotees too. These statements are the greatest truth, not mere gossip, nor imaginary poetry and literature. So devotees, even the so-called little devotees, are the greatest people, the most worthy people in society, not just in our ISKCON society, but in society in general. And they're not, but they should be respected as such. Prabhupada said, that is our material disease. I do not want to respect you, but you should offer me respect. This is the position. Therefore, our system is to call another Vaishnava as Prabhu. Sir, you are Prabhu, you are master. But we call Prabhu, but I think, no, you are not Prabhu. I am Prabhu, you are servant. This cheating process will not help us. Actually, we should believe that he is Prabhu. He is servant of Krishna, therefore he is my Prabhu. This is Vaishnava mentality. Gopi Bhartu Parakamalayor Dasa Dasanudas. Because the devotee has accepted his position as servant of Krishna, therefore he becomes master. This is the principle of leadership in Krishna consciousness. Even a small devotee, so-called small devotee, so-called new devotee. In our ISKCON society, a so-called old devotee is someone who's been around 30, 40, 50 years. And relatively speaking, it's a long time, but it's not actually that long a time. We've been in this material world for countless life cycles. So what's our 30, 40, 50 years? So all of us, we're in this together. It's not all one. There are very advanced devotees, there are new devotees, but in many ways, we're more in the same boat. We're more all alike than we are different in being devotees, aspiring devotees, struggling devotees of Krishna. And this is just such a nice quote. This is a quote by Srivatsa Goswami, who is the leader of he's descended from the Radharaman Goswami family, and he was interviewed by Satyaraj Prabhu for one of his books, and he had this to say. He said, the real strength and glory of ISKCON lies in anonymous, obscure, yet sincere devotees. It does not lie in temples, in distributing 80 million Gitas in a huge bank balance, or in any of those things. Again, those things are laudable when used properly, but the real strength and glory lies in just a few sincere, if also obscure devotees. And ISKCON has many of them. The big people will come and go, but a sincere, simple heart will always be there. We'll always be ready to worship Krishna with love and devotion. And that's what keeps the movement alive. So we can each be one of these small, obscure devotees, humble, unknown, but with a sincere heart to worship Krishna. And that in a way, that makes us the leader, the sustenance of ISKCON. And those who are more expert and can do more is also glorious. But everyone has their part to play. And yet, there's also advanced devotees. There's less advanced devotees, there's more advanced devotees. In Nectar of Instruction, in text 5, I think it is, Prabhupada explains in the purport that in order to apply the different kinds of reciprocation with devotees, and in order to respect devotees properly, we need to discriminate who are lesser devotees, middle devotees, and topmost devotees. And all devotees are offered respect. Anyone who chants Hare Krishna even once is offered respect, at least within the mind. Those who are our peers, who are practicing nicely, they are our friends, and we make friendship with them. And those who are great, very elevated, topmost devotees, we offer them our service and we surrender unto them. So amongst all the devotees, these very advanced devotees, we say pure devotees, whatever that may mean, depending on the context, are the true leaders of society amongst all the devotees. So the guru, the spiritual master, the acharya, this is the leader of society, because he has done what all devotees do, accepting Krishna as their Lord and surrendering to him, but they've done it in the topmost and the best and the most perfect way. Therefore, their best acceptance of servitorship makes them the most qualified as leaders. Therefore, we follow Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, we follow our spiritual master. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and Nectar of Devotion, there's a list of 64 items of devotional service, and the first 5 of them are all varieties on the same theme. 1, accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. 2, becoming initiated by the spiritual master and learning how to discharge devotional service from him. 3, obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. 4, following in the footsteps of great acharyas under the direction of the spiritual master. And 5, inquiring from the spiritual master how to advance in Krishna consciousness. So these are the best leaders, even amongst all the devotees. That great devotees, plural, who have surrendered to such a high degree that they're worthy of being taken shelter of. And that's a whole class in itself, finding these devotees and delineating all of their qualities. But one verse, very briefly, explains it, I think, in a nice way. Tad vigyanartam sa gurum eva vigachet samit panistrotriam brahmanishtam. That you must find a great devotee and surrender to him and accept him as spiritual master. Prabhupada says that this word eva vigachet means there's no arguing about it, you must do it. And who are they? Or how do you approach him? Samit pani. Samit pani literally means with wood in your hand. So we know there's the story in Krishna book in Bhagavatam of Krishna in the ashram of Sandipani Muni, and him and his friend Sudama, thank you.
Sudama.
Brain blank there.
Sudama.
Went out collecting firewood for the spiritual master. So Samit Pani, with wood in your hand, signifies, first of all, that you're willing to do menial service, like going out to collect firewood for the spiritual master, just like Krishna and Sudama did. And Samit Pani also means firewood for the sacrificial fire, which means you should actually take formal initiation from such a person. And what are the qualities of that person? Summarized very broadly and simply, Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. Shrotriyam means he is expert in the Shastra. He studied the Shastra and absorbed and learned and understood and preached the Shastra very well. And Brahmanishtam means he's fixed in spirit. That means Shrotriyam, he studied the scripture, but not just that he has a theoretical understanding, but his life is actually lived on the spiritual platform. He's living Bhagavatam. Prabhupada would use this phrase occasionally, living Bhagavatam. Or just like in the morning Bhagavatam class, we've been doing the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto. And the phrase is there in a verse from last week, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, that we serve the Bhagavata. And Bhagavata means Srimad Bhagavatam is one Bhagavata, and the devotee of Krishna is another Bhagavata. And Prabhupada says they're identical. One is the scripture, the words and teachings of Krishna, and one is the living embodiment of those teachings of Krishna, the pure devotee. So such a guru, such a leader, this is the real leader for us, the best leader for us. Prabhupada occasionally would use the phrase Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead for the spiritual master. There's Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and there's the great devotee who is the Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead. And for us in ISKCON, that Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead is, of course, Srila Prabhupada. We're living in his movement and advancing in his movement, and we study his teachings and his example, and we hear from him because he's our leader. He's the leader, founder Acharya, means he's the leader of ISKCON. And those for members of ISKCON, he's our leader, our topmost leader. So, and he wanted us to follow that and also gain that position of leadership. This is a letter, very interesting letter. This is long before the days of the VIHE. And Prabhupada started instituting a system of examinations for his students. And he said, this is a letter, another examination will be held sometimes in 1971 on the 4 books, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and nectar of devotion. One who will pass this examination will be awarded with the title of Bhaktivedanta. I want that all of my spiritual sons and daughters will inherit this title of Bhaktivedanta, so that the family transcendental diploma will continue through the generations. Those possessing the title of Bhaktivedanta will be allowed to initiate disciples. Maybe by 1975, all of my disciples will be allowed to initiate and increase the number of the generations. That is my program. So Srila Prabhupada is our supreme leader, and he wanted us to also accept this kind of leadership by becoming qualified. And yet, there's a caution that if you want to be a leader, for the sake of being a leader, this is actually an anartha. I think it was Kaivalya Prabhu last week in the morning Bhagavatam class. He was discussing some of the anarthas in devotional service. And one of those anarthas is called Taranga Rangini. And this is an anartha that springs from the performance of devotional service itself. That means when you're a devotee, as you advance and you gain genuine spiritual advancement, and maybe you get some position, you start getting some respect. You start getting some benefit. And if you become attached to enjoying those benefits for yourself, then this is an anartha, this is a disqualification. So being a leader is it's a double-edged sword. Being a leader, we want to become leaders because leaders educate and protect and enlighten and advance society. And this is what we want to do. But if we become attached to the position, just like I'm giving a class, this is very presumptive of me, but just sitting here giving a class is a presumption of some kind of leadership that I may or may not actually possess. And I have my seat I'm sitting on. It's about this tall, this much seat, higher than everyone else. And when I sit on it, because of my weight, it might shrink down to that, but I'm still higher than everyone else. I'm in front and everyone's looking at me. So if I become attached to that and think, yes, I should be respected, I should have a seat. And why a seat this high? Maybe a seat this high, maybe a seat this high, maybe a seat this high. And if I start thinking like that, the whole thing is spoiled. This is also a very, what time should I end by? How soon?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, okay. Okay. So this is a nice incident from Brihad Bhagavatamrita. I don't know if anyone knows the history of it, but there's a devotee in there called Gopakumar, and he's going through so many adventures all over the universe. He's actually a simple cowherd boy and a great devotee, but he's also somewhat innocent. And as he's gaining knowledge and advancement in devotional service, he goes through different phases, and he even makes his way up to the heavenly planets. And one time while he's living in the heavenly planets up in Brahmaloka, one time Lord Brahma got up in the morning and he was doing his puja down by the river, and there was some foam in the river, and he touched that foam, and that foam sprang up into a big demon, and Lord Brahma got scared and ran away and hid from that demon. So because of that, there was no Lord Brahma running the universe. So somehow this Gopakumar became appointed as Lord Brahma and running the universe. And this is what he says. He says, early one morning, out of curiosity, Brahma touched a mass of foam and it turned into a demon. Terrified of him, Brahma fled. The personality of God had killed the demon, but Brahma, overcome by fear, did not come back, and the Lord assigned me to his post. I sent Vaishnavas into the creation to increase devotional service to the Lord. Indeed, I engaged only Vaishnavas everywhere in all responsibilities, arranging for the Almighty Lord to be worshipped in all directions with great sacrifices. Like the Ashwamedha, I flooded the universe with joy. So he became a leader, the biggest leader in the universe in one sense, Lord Brahma. And he did that job of leadership so perfectly with a spiritual bent that he made everything, ran the whole universe on the principle of devotional service. But he was not at all, not only not attached, he was actually a little adverse to accepting a position of leadership. He was doing it out of duty, but he was not into leadership per se. He goes on, Even though I was encumbered with the post of the supreme authority in the universe, even though I was glorified in various ways by the Maharshis, the Brahmarishis, and the personified Vedas, Agamas, Puranas, Itihastas, sacrifices, and pilgrimage sites, and even though I was surrounded by great sources of delight, I did not give up my natural simplicity. Even so, I was immersed in the waves of the ocean of Brahma's duties, and therefore unable to enjoy devotional service to the Lord as I had before. My mind was too disturbed by anxious concerns. So he was doing his duty so perfectly, but he was not into the position. Rather, he hankered for a simple life of devotional service. Prabhupada said about himself, his own life, one time he was remembering his days at Radha Damodar Temple before he came to America. And he said, those were such happy days. I was living there in the Dham and simply depending on Krishna. And he went on, he said, then I was depending on Krishna, and now I have to depend on so many disciples. And he said, even they're giving me everything, but back then when I was surrendering to Krishna, just depending on Krishna, those were such happy days. So Prabhupada also accepted the austerity, and it was a tremendous austerity, coming to America, dealing with all of us crazy Westerners and crazy Easterners and crazy people all over the world, and giving us Krishna consciousness and giving his life, his life's breath and his life's blood to do that. And he was willingly doing that, but he was not at all attached to the position. Everyone wants hundreds and thousands of people serving them, but Prabhupada was saying it was happier for me before when I had no servants, when I was just depending upon Krishna. So this is the mood of a leader. He doesn't want to enjoy the fruits of leadership. He does his duty as Krishna and Guru and scripture dictate, and he does it well in service to Krishna, but his heart is simply absorbed in simple, pure worship of Krishna, not in cultivating lordship or positionship. So one last caution about that, again from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and this is one of my favorite things from him. I think this was spoken by him at a Vyasa Puja ceremony when he was sitting in front of everyone on a big Vyasa sign. He says, we have taken upon ourselves this responsibility of welcoming this grave charge. All the audience have accepted ordinary seats. I alone have been provided with a lofty seat. All are being told in effect, quote, do have a look at a big animal from the zoo gardens. What arrogance, so foolish, so wicked. Have you ever seen such a big brute? Garlands of flowers have been put around his neck. What laudations, what bombastic, long drawn and hyperbolic adjectives. And how complacently too he is listening to the praise of his own achievements, how intently and with his own ears. He also evidently feels delighted in mind. Is he not acting in plain violation of the teachings of Mahaprabhu? Can such a big brute, so selfish and insolent, be ever reclaimed from brutishness? I happen to be one of the greatest of fools. No one offers me good advice on account of my arrogance. Inasmuch as nobody condescends to instruct me, I placed my case before Mahaprabhu himself. The thought occurred to me that I would make over the charge of myself to him and see what he would advise me to do. Then Sri Chaitanya Dev said to me, whomsoever thou meetest, instruct him regarding Krishna. By my command, become Guru, deliver this land. In this thou wilt not be obstructed by the current of the world. Thou wilt have my company once again at this place. So that's his translation of Yare Dekatare Kaha Krishna Upadesh, Amara Gyaya Guru Hanratare Desh. That you accept the order of a Mahaprabhu and you become a guru. And if people worship you, and if you get laudations and donations or charity or this or that, you may have to accept that, but be very careful. This can very easily spoil your devotional service. But if you do it properly, it's the most glorious thing, like Prabhupada did. He would accept so much verbal praise and gifts and money and everything for his position as founder Acharya of ISKCON. and he kept nothing for himself. One time he was speaking with, who was the professor who wrote that Hare Krishna and the Counterculture? Stilson Judah, right. And he was actually asking Prabhupada to have that book printed by the BBT. And Prabhupada was willing to do it. So the professor asked, what about a commission for my printing of my book? And Prabhupada said, I write all these books and print all these books. And what is my commission? 3 chapatis. So this is the ideal, that not everyone, but some devotees may accept positions, temple president, temple commander, Bhakta leader, GBC, guru, whatever it may be. And those who are fortunate could also stay just simple devotees, preaching and being an example to the best of their ability. But everyone has to be careful, because even the pauper can become proud of his penny. Even the ordinary little devotee could be proud of any little thing. That, oh, this person moved into the temple 1 week after I did. Why is he getting the ghee lamp before me? This isn't right. Or something like that. Or it could be something big. So we have to be careful of that. We want to be simple, humble devotees. And that devotee, that topmost devotee who's the greatest leader, why is he the greatest leader? Because actually, in the ultimate sense, there is only one leader, and that leader is Krishna. Ekala Ishwara Krishna Arasabhabritya. That there's only one leader, Krishna. And all other living entities and big demigods and even all the other avatars are all the servants of Krishna. And they're all dancing according to his tune. So no one is the leader. Only Krishna is the leader. From the very beginning of the Bhagavatam, he's the source of everything, the maintainer of everything, the creator of everything, and the destroyer of everything. He knows everything, and he's completely independent. There may be leaders in this world, but they're all contingent leaders. Their leadership is limited and contingent on the leadership of Krishna. Only Krishna is the independent leader. So no one else is the leader. And if you have a position, don't think of yourself as a leader. Krishna is the leader and you're the servant. And of course, all of these are perfectly reconciled. These are not contradictory ideas. They can all be perfectly reconciled. That you accept the position of leadership humbly, knowing that Krishna is the real leader. Prabhupada was the leader of this big movement, thousands of disciples ready to jump at the slightest, snap of his finger. But he was always always knew himself as the humble servant of Krishna, which made him an even more perfect leader. So this is how everything is reconciled in devotional service. It's described in the 4th canto. Let's see. In the 4th canto, 20th chapter, in the purport, Prabhupada said, Krishna is pleased only by elevated character and behavior, but these cannot develop unless one becomes a pure devotee of the Lord. Anyone who has developed unalloyed, unflinching devotional service unto the Lord develops his original good qualities as spirit soul. The spirit soul, as part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has all the good qualities of the Lord. When the spirit soul is contaminated by the material modes of nature, one is considered good or bad with reference to the material qualities. But when one is transcendental to all material qualities, all the good qualities come out. So this is interesting. Krishna is the leader. Krishna is the reservoir of all good qualities, of all opulences. But we are, just like I said, the brand new devotee, the brand new person walking in the temple learns we're spirit, soul, part and parcel of Krishna. That means that when we are established firmly in that relationship with Krishna, we partake, or we are able to partake of those qualities and potencies of Krishna. Therefore, the devotee can become a leader through his relationship with Krishna. This is how all of this is resolved. And even the humble devotee, the small devotee, if he's establishing himself in his relationship with Krishna, if he's chanting Hare Krishna, studying Shastra, serving the devotees, living with the devotees, doing all the activities of devotional services given by Prabhupada, then he's a leader based on Krishna's leadership. One last verse. This is Krishna himself speaking in the Adi Purana. Ye me bhakta jana parta, na me bhaktas chite jana, mad bhaktanam chaye bhaktas, te me bhakta tamamata. Someone may think, oh, Krishna's the leader. I'm just going to serve Krishna and not be concerned with anything else. But Krishna says, Ye me bhakta jana parta. Someone who says, I'm the servant of Krishna, na me bhakta chite jana. He's actually not my servant. Such a person who says, I'm directly the servant of Krishna, he's not my servant. But mad bhaktanam chaye bhakta, one who is the bhakta of my bhakta, who is the servant of my servant, he is actually the servant of Krishna. So this is how we understand Krishna, and this is how we appreciate leadership in the world and in our ISKCON movement, that it's all based on servitorship to Krishna, and recognizing that in ourselves and in Prabhupada and in all the devotees around us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. If there's any questions or comments or discussion, we could do that now. Thank you. We'll adjust the live audience first if there's any questions or comments. A little louder, please.
It was lovely lecture. Thank you very much. So one simple question that when devotees, you said that devotees should be taking a leadership position. So devotees doesn't want to get entangled in that material activity. So if they do, but chance they might fall down, they might get, in spite of being careful, they might be, by overtaking their nature, they might be entangled. So what do they do? Should they go that way?
Good question. First of all, one has to be aware of their own ability and strength and potency. And someone should learn to be self-aware enough to know that this is a challenge and a responsibility I feel like I can accept and serve Krishna in this way, or maybe this is a responsibility that I'm not quite ready for. So we need to be self-aware enough to determine that. We need to have friends and authorities that we can discuss with who know us well and who can also help us decide. And in that connection, I'll also tell a little story that Ravindra Sri Prabhu was told hundreds of times. Years ago here in Philly, under Prabhupada's direction, the devotees were trying to start some political movement, a political party of devotees. I think the In God We Trust Party for Purified Leaders, I think was the name. But Ravindra Sri Prabhu was talking to Prabhupada about it. He said, a devotee gets a position, what to speak of a position in ISKCON, a political position. He may get contaminated, he may fall down. How does he protect himself from that? And Prabhupada said, chant 16 rounds and follow the 4 regulative principles. And Ravindra Sri Prabhu said, and that's enough? And Prabhupada said, yes, that's enough. So combine those things, that Krishna will give us strength and ability to withstand. Even if we have no position, there's so many temptations in life to fall down or to deviate. And that may increase if one has a position. But if one feels strong and if one has the support of friends and family devotees and feels he has the strength, accepting a position of leadership or responsibility for Krishna is a very glorious thing, and actually can be a inspiration for very great and rapid advancement. Or it could be a cause of fall down. So a devotee has to be careful and intelligent in how to do that, but not necessarily automatically reject it or automatically accept it. Everything has to be done intelligently. Is that all right?
Yes, thank you very much.
Anything else from the live audience? Anything from people out there in television land? There's a couple listening, I see. Yes, no?
Maybe digital hands go up, I don't know.
Oh, let me see. I'm not very. Okay. We're good? Hare Krishna, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And it's great to see people in the temple again. It's actually really ecstatic. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Acharya Prabhu, for that very wonderful, informative